one thing. Have you been threatened?
Never. Never the slightest bit.
Okay. All right, well, so either you've never crossed the line, you've never revealed anything that you weren't supposed to, or you don't know enough. Is that right?
Or you're doing someone a favor.
Or somebody's protecting me.
Okay. So the last...
But you are exactly right. Either I'm talking through my hat and I don't have the real information.
Right.
Or somebody's protecting me.
Do you know who?
Oh, I didn't say which one was true. I mean, you know, I think a lot of this stuff is true, but how would I know? I've never been to the moon. I'd like to go. Mm-hmm. If I go and somebody can arrange a ride, like Bob Lazar, he says he's going to have his spacesuit on while we're standing, you know, in the airlock there. And when it comes up like that, he says, you know, at least I'm going to have some air, you know, and I'll watch you suffocate. And I said, no, I'll be able to breathe normally. Now, when people go to the moon, it takes them 2 weeks of decompression before they can actually go out and spend some time there. The fact is, you can go right there and breathe, but you know you'll get altitude sickness. Just like if you go to climb Everest, you can go right up there. You'll probably live, but you'll hurt pretty bad. That's why they go to the different camps as they go up, is to get acclimatized. And the same thing to the moon. It takes about 2 weeks.
Okay, so tell us how the moon got where it is, because you know that the moon is a satellite that's actually a fake.
Right. It's a spaceship. It was towed into orbit, I would say, 30 to 40,000 years ago. Now, the reason I say 30 to 40,000 years ago is because it's still within the history of man. Velikovsky talks about the different proselenes and the different civilizations that talked about the time when there was no moon, and then when there was 2 moons, and now we have 1 moon. This guy here, Norm Bergman, wrote The Ringmakers of Saturn. It's an excellent book. Norm Bergman is very qualified, was for 40 years a scientific part of both NACA and also Lockheed. Retired from Lockheed, I think about 15 years ago. No, more than
NACA?
that. National Aeronautics, the predecessor to NASA.
Oh, really? Okay.
National Aeronautics Commission, Aeronautics, I think.
I see, okay.
They were the predecessor to NASA.
Okay.
But when he retired, he somehow got some photos, some really good negatives of Voyager, which went by Saturn. And he's set up a little lab in his house, and he started looking these. And he ended up writing Ringmakers of Saturn. And what he shows you here is what he found in the rings of Saturn is 3 vehicles, spaceships, the biggest of which is 31,496 miles long and 2,422 miles in diameter. We're talking about a fairly large spaceship there. Now, Norm Bergman, when he wrote this book at the beginning, it's very good. He says, now look, he says, I'm going to be talking about some stuff that is very interesting, but you can't skip a page, you can't skip a word that you don't know. You have to go from the beginning to end, or you won't understand what I'm saying. And I did go from beginning to end. Now,
okay, but when was this written?
This would be 1986.
Okay, so it's not that old.
No. And I go see Norm...
and it's talking about a huge spaceship.
in the rings of Saturn.
Spaceship?
Who built them?
Yeah.
We don't know who built them. But anyway...
Us?
No. We couldn't build anything like that. We have some amazing stuff, but we couldn't do that.
Okay.
No, this is somebody else. But what the interesting part in the book, and the reason why we're getting here, is because at the end of this book, he starts talking about the moon and how the moon was towed into orbit. Because the people that operate that stuff in Saturn, and also Iapetus, towed the moon into orbit. And he goes into here and explains exactly why he believes the moon was towed into orbit, and how it was, and how they grabbed on to the Mare Orientale.
Who are you saying towed the moon?
Whoever. We don't know.
So he doesn't conjecture on who.
No.
on what alien race, for example. No. I mean, obviously it's an alien race. No. Henry Deacon, our secret source, has also substantiated that the moon was towed into orbit. But have you got an idea what alien race was responsible for that?
No, absolutely not.
None.
What's interesting here, another interesting thing, is I see Norm every year because when I go do the UFO Expo West, which is the only one I do, he lives in Los Altos Hills. And he's writing about Iapetus. And Iapetus is probably a spaceship too.
Okay.
And so
we got to get in touch with this guy.
You better, because he's on his way out. I saw him last September. He was not well. He was finishing up the book on Iapetus, but he wasn't working on it every day.
Okay, was he a scientist?
Yes.
Okay, but who did he work for? I mean, in other words, he's government.
Give me a second.
NACA.
Yeah.
I understand that, but in a certain level, he's revealing secret information.
No, as what?
Well, I'm just asking you. Wouldn't this be secret?
No. Thermodynamicist, Douglas Aircraft, 1943-94, Aero Research Scientist, NACA Ames Laboratory, 1944-1956, Lockheed Missile and Space Company, then Supervisor Flight Test, 1956-68, Manager Flight Test Analysis, 1958-1962, Manager Test Plans and Direction, 1962-63, Manager Re-Entry Test Operations, 63-64.
Okay,
there's all this stuff, how qualified this guy is.
Right. Why are they letting him talk? Why are they letting him do this? I mean,
what's he saying? There's a spaceship that's 31 miles long in the rings of Saturn.
Plausible deniability is...
Sure. Who's going to believe that?
Okay. All right.
So anyway, 2 years ago, at the UFO Expo West, I mean, that was so interesting because, number one, one of my lectures was Apollo 1 and the 4 people that were in it. And there was Grissom, White, and Chaffee, and then there was a 4th guy, and he was part of the secret astronaut corps. And the reason they had to keep it secret is because if the public were allowed to know there was a 4th guy in there, then they would not want to know who he was. And there was no possible way that NASA could ever reveal that there was another guy in there, because they would have to reveal the secret space program. And the secret space program started in 1959, and they're the ones that went to the moon in 1962. They went to Mars in 1966. Everything we know is a cover for the secret space program.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, when I give a lecture, if I have 2 hours, I always give an hour and then let the public talk to me for an hour, because I'm going to learn more from them than they are going to from me. And one of Chaffee's relatives got up and said, "John, you're right. We've always known this. There was a 4th man, but we didn't know who it was." Now, I know who the name is, but I keep it to myself, because if somebody comes to me, and says, "I know who it is," I know who it is. And it's really interesting because his son is a current shuttle astronaut.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So anyway, I go to see Norm 2 years ago, and in talking with him, I said, by the way, the electromagnetic vehicle that towed the moon into orbit, where is it now? And he said, I think it's on the backside of the moon. So when I got hooked up with Ron Schmidt, we started collecting photos on the backside of the moon, and we found it. It's in the crater Tchaikovsky. And the story of how we did it was so interesting, and how NASA covered it up. There's, like 6 different photos of Tchaikovsky as they tried to airbrush this electromagnetic vehicle out of the picture by making it an island. But we got them. And we got 2 really good photos. One was discovered by a lady who works for us in Florida, and she discovered it on a thumbnail of Tchaikovsky. And what happened is, when NASA was advertising this particular photo, they airbrushed the big one, but when they had the thumbnail, somebody looked at that and said, "Hey, I'm not going to take the time to enlarge that, take the vehicle out and put it down. Nobody will notice it anyway." But we noticed it, and it's great. And that's where we got the photo of the EMV on the far side, and Apollo 15 flew over it, and they got some movies of it, and it's just a quick shot, but it's really interesting.
The secret astronaut who was killed, his son is a shuttle astronaut.
Right.
Okay. And this is interesting because it sort of shows how they bring someone into the fold who might have something to tell the world at a later date.
Right.
But if he's a shuttle astronaut, he's not going to talk, right? He's in the fold.
Right. Same thing with Grissom's son.
Oh, really?
He's in the
See,
program.
this would be an interesting investigative angle, would be, what about all the sons and daughters of the astronauts? Do they all work for the company?
Yeah, it would be. Now, Gus Grissom, you know, when the fire started, you know, every single story you read will say that, you know, there's like 3 words spoken. Chaffee said, fire. Somebody said, you know, it's getting hot in here. But in every single story, Grissom doesn't say anything. Now, as you know, Grissom was the most highly critical and vociferous astronaut in that program. He came out, you know, before they were supposed to go up there, he said there's 60 major things with this wrong. How can we possibly be flying this? He's the one that hung the lemon over the Apollo, you know, and NASA hated him. Now, I've been told by guys I consider insiders, and there's another one, call him number 4, that NASA didn't specifically kill those guys, but they let it happen. They knew it was going to happen, and they just let it happen.
But why?
Well, there was a number of reasons. Number 1, they needed more time. They needed to get the program back on schedule, and the only way they could do that was to have a horrendous accident, and they wanted to get rid of Grissom. And so, as you know, the New York Times, and I forget the guy, the story the next day was that he talked to NASA, and they said that the tape was gruesome of the last few minutes. And of course, we've all heard that Grissom didn't say anything. We all know what he said. He was saying, you know, you bastards, you've killed us all. You know, I knew this was coming to this. You know, I hope you all watch us, you know, die. And just really bad. And so I'm sure that's what happened. And I saw another quote just yesterday, I can't remember what it was, about how gruesome the tape was.
Wow.
We'd like to ask you if Clark McClellan has got something to say about this as well.
Yeah.
We're in touch with Clark, but we haven't met him.
Clark's a great guy. I've known him since 1990. We've never met, but we've always talked on the phone. You know, I've always tried to get his notes. He has his book ready. He has 3 books. He doesn't want to publish one of them. He wants to publish all 3. I don't blame him. He knows a lot of stuff. He knows, as you know, much more than I'm telling you.
Do you think that he's actually going to get his books published? Are they going to let him out there?
Not a chance in hell.
Okay.
The only thing, you know, I'd like to get him, but, you know, Clark is so pissed, and I don't know what happened, but I know he is the insider of NASA. There's nobody in the position, you know, that could come out and say more than Clark. I mean, he was there from the beginning.
Okay. But they've done just about everything but kill him, haven't they? He hasn't got a penny.
Right. And I don't know why they haven't killed him.
Absolutely.
Anyway, one more thing I'm going to tell you about Norm, because we're going to get it into it later. I told Norm the last time, last year I went to UFO Expo, and well, I'll tell you, got some good information. But anyway, I went to see Norm, and he's not well, and he's had several surgeries, and I expect any day to hear that he's passed away. He's 87, and I said, Norm, I said, I'm thinking that the airplanes that crashed into the World Trade Center were holographs. And he said, John, you're probably right, and here's why. He said, just before I retired, I was driving down on the Bayshore Freeway to Sunnyvale, and he said I had a friend in the right seat of the car, and he says, like it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe 8:15. He said, we're driving south, and we saw this shadow, and we looked up, and here, he says, it wasn't a 747, but it was a huge 4-engine airplane. It wasn't 200 feet above us. And he said, we looked out and looked at this thing, and he said, of course, we're, 20 miles from San Jose, and 30 miles from San Francisco. There's no possible way an airplane could, legitimately be flying right there. And he says, we watched it for about 10 seconds, and it went just like you turned a light bulb out.